Hello people, this is Aryan from Code Grind and I'm back with another video, and in this video we'll be creating a memory game using JavaScript. So as a child I really used to like this game, and finally I've created a version of my own of this memory game. So I have tried to recreate a game I used to play which had these similar kind of yellow tiles. Uh, so I tried to clone it as much as possible. Now let's get into the game. So this game is basically based on animals. So you need to guess a pair of correct animals. So here, if I've selected a duck, I need to select a tile with another duck on it. If I select the wrong animal, then the tiles will flip back again into their positions. If I guess the correct animals, then they will turn green and they'll stay flipped. So this is how the game basically works. Like, so there's not much explanation needed. Now let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's start with the HTML part. We'll have the basic layout ready, memory game. So we'll start with the div with a class of container. We'll wrap all our things inside this div, and in here we will need a heading just to describe what we are creating. Memory game using JavaScript. So we'll also use a bit of CSS to design the cards and some animation. So just basic CSS. Now we'll design our cards. So we'll have a div with a class of cards, and we'll place all of our cards inside this div. We'll need 16 cards now. So we'll have 16 divs, and each of these divs will have an image of the animal. So there will be a total of 8 pairs. So we'll need 8 different animals. I have got these images over here. I will give a link to these images. You can download them from there. So we'll be using cat, dog, duck, jaguar, lion, panther, snake, and tiger. So, let me show you how we are going to create our first animal. So we'll have an attribute of animal which will tell us what animal this particular card is hiding behind. So duck, then we'll have an image, and the source will be duck.png. Okay, we don't need an alt attribute. Now here, if I reload, yeah. So you see, we have got this duck image. We haven't provided any styling yet. So similarly, we will create all the 15 other cards. And so I've got all of these HTML part ready over here. I'll just copy paste this. Okay, so we have got all of our HTML part done. Yeah, so this is basically it. We don't need any other thing for our HTML part. Now let's move on to the styling part. So before styling, let me show how our game looks like. So this is what our game looks like. Just 16 random images placed here and there. Also, very uneven images, so images of different heights and widths. So we need to style all of this. Now, before beginning with the CSS of any of your projects, the first and the foremost thing which you should do is reset the default values. By default, HTML provides us with some default values, default margins for some elements, and we need to reset all of those things, margins, paddings, and box sizing as border box. You can also put some default styling here, like you can reset the master font and any other thing, but these three things you should definitely start with. Now we'll select our container and give it a display of grid and place items center. So display grid place item center is a method of center aligning everything to the exact center of any div. There are many other methods to do the same thing. I have a dedicated video for this particular topic. I'll give a link and you can go watch that video. And also we'll give it a min height of 100 VH so that it covers the entire viewport. Viewport is nothing but this window. So yeah, this is it. You won't see any noticeable changes right now, but as we move along with the styling, you will notice the changes. Now we'll select our heading, give it a text align of center. Okay, let's see it. We didn't get the changes. Okay, that's because we haven't linked the CSS file here. So link. Okay. Now you see we are being able to see the changes. Now we'll change the font family. I like this Poppins font a lot. You can download it from any of the free websites, or you can also use Google Fonts for this Poppins. I'll give a link in the description for this as well. The font size, and we'll change the font weight to 500. That's it for heading. Okay, we have got this sorted. Now we'll move along with our cards. So what we want to do with the cards is we want to arrange them in a grid of 4 by 4. So we'll give them a display of grid and grid template columns. Repeat 4 comma 1 5. So if you don't know how grids work, there are a lot of crash courses out there. I'll give a link to one of the crash courses where I learned about this display grid, and I'm sure you'll like it. So now zooming out, you can see there are 4 animals now in each row. Okay, yeah, see. So there are 4 animals in each row. Still, there's a lot of styling to be done. Let's further move on to that. So apart from that, what we need to do is now let's move on to designing the cards. Okay, so card, now we'll give it a height of 110 pixels, width of 90 pixels. So these are values I have already tested while I created the game, and you can change the values according to you, but I found these to be perfect for my use case. Give it a background color of, so this is a yellow which I'll be using, a border radius of 10 pixels. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we have got all of these cards, but they are stuck to each other. So for that, we'll give a grid gap of 2m so that they'll have gaps between rows and columns. Yeah, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. Now, let's give them a cursor of pointer and a transition of 0.3 seconds, all ease. Now, I want an animation. So whenever I hover, I want this to zoom in a bit. So card hover transform scale of 1.03. So it would scale by a scale of 1.03. You see? Yeah, that's happening. Along with that, the image which is of that particular card is also scaling. So now let's move on to styling the image, which is very important. So we'll select the image and we'll give the width of 80%. Okay, now it's looking much better, but we also need to give it a height. So we'll give it a max height of 90 pixels. It can get a lower height, but maximum of 90. Okay, and a transition of 0.3 seconds on these. Okay, this is fine, but still it is not at the exact center of the div. And as I told you, to align anything to the center, you just need to copy these 2 lines and I'll paste it here in the card. So now you see the image is at the center. Now by default, we don't want these images to be visible, so we'll give it an opacity of 0. Okay, so this is the basic layout is ready. Now we'll move on to the JavaScript part. So there is a lot of CSS yet to be done, but you'll only understand it when we move along with the JavaScript, and CSS will uh, put them together and we'll go line by line. Okay, so we here in the JavaScript, we'll start it at the bottom of the at the big sorry before the closing tag of the body, before the closing body tag. Okay, we'll set the counter. So this is a counter which we will need, and we'll select 2 animals. So we'll have a div with first selection. Sorry, not a div. We'll have a variable first selection. Also, we'll have a div with the name. Again, sorry, not a div, a variable with the name of second selection. So these 2 variables will hold our first and the second selections. This counter, I'll tell you about its purpose later. Now we'll select all of the cards. So document.query selector all. Okay, so this will select all the cards. Now we'll run a for each loop for each card over here. Okay, now whenever we click on any of the cards, we want it to be selected as the first selection. Card.add event listener click will run a function whenever we click on a card. Let's see whether this is working or not. Okay, So now I'll go to the console here. Here we get the console. Now whenever I click, I get a true. Okay, so this is working absolutely fine. Now we'll move along with our JavaScript part. So what we need to do is whenever we click on a card, we need to change its color. As you might have noticed when we click, I want the color to be changed to a bit darker shade of yellow so that it is highlighted that this particular card is selected. So for that, what I'll do it, I do I'll add a class, class list dot add clicked. So whenever we click on any card, a clicked class will be added to that card. So you can see it from elements over here. Okay. So now let's say, okay, so these are all these different cards. If I click on the first card, you see the clicked class got added to this card. If I click on the third card, the clicked class got added to the third card. So this is how this class list.add works. Now we also need to define some CSS. So we'll go here dot card dot clicked. So whenever a card will have a class of clicked, we'll change its background color, and the background color which we'll be using is, I have it noted down. Okay, so that will be orange. So you see I clicked on it and its shade got changed. Right now we can select as many cards as we want, but we don't want this to happen. So we'll move along with our JavaScript to rectify this. Okay, so now first of all what we need to do is, if the counter is set to 0, that means we haven't selected anything. So we will change okay, if the counter is set to 0, that means we haven't selected any of the cards. So whatever animal we have clicked on should go to the first selection variable. But if the counter has the value of 1, that means one card has already been selected. Then in that case, the selected animal will get stored in the second selection variable. So I hope you get it. Otherwise, let me move further. You will get all of this step by step. So now if the counter is 0, then what we will do is we will set the first selection as this card dot, as you might remember, we have set an attribute of animal to each of the cards. So card dot get will fetch that attribute animal. Okay, now the first selection will hold this particular animal name, and we will increment the counter. Okay, but now what if the counter is not set to 0 and it is something other than 0, like it is 1? This should be counter. Okay, now if the counter is 1, then in that case we need to set the second selection variable as card dot get attribute animal. Okay, so this is working fine, and after that we need to set this to 0. Okay, this is done, this is done. Now let's see whether this is working or not. Okay, we'll console.log our first selection variable, also the console.log the second selection variable. Let's see. Now when I click, so this is the first card, so in the console we should get the first selection. See, dog has been selected, and the second selection we have got an empty over here. But now if I click here, so we should get dog and duck. Okay, now when I click here, the first selection got changed because now two selections are over, so the values have reset, and the third selection is actually the new first selection. So that it is working absolutely fine and it is behaving in the correct way. But now what we want is, after we select the second selection, so when we select the second card, we need to check whether those two are equal or not. So here when we select the this block, this else block is for the second selection. So here we need to give it a condition to check whether both of the selections are equal or not. So we will check if first selection is equal to second selection or not. Now in the case they are equal, what we will do is um, we will select all the corrected card the correct cards. So correct cards document dot query selector animal is equal to whatever is the name. let me write the code first and then I'll explain it to you. Okay, now what this will do is, now if both the selections are same, then we will select both the cards with that particular animal using this code. So this correct cards will select both of these cards which have the animal attribute set to the first selection. You can also set this to second selection because anyways these two are equal, so it will behave in the same way. Or instead of this, you can also write card.get attribute animal. It's completely up to you. And now to this now this correct cards will hold two cards. So this is actually an array. So to the first element of the array, we need to add a class list of checked. Okay, so this checked means that it has been checked, that it is correct. You can also name this class as correct. It's completely up to you. And we also need to set this to the second element of the array, that is the second correct card. Now let's see here in the elements. We have 9 cards. This is duck, and I know this is also duck because I have created it. So when I select duck, the clicked card got added to it, the clicked class got added to it, and when I select to this also, so you see this checked got added because both of them are ducks. So this has got the checked card added to it. But in case if I set this as duck and I select the wrong second animal, then the checked card didn't get added to it. So this is working absolutely fine. Now we need to define some styling for the checked class. We'll do nothing but change the background color to light green. Also, one thing which we have forgotten is when we click on a card, the image should also be visible. So when the card has the class of clicked, then the image should have an opacity of 1. Okay, so when we click on a card, the image opacity is 1. This is working fine. Also, let's say when we select duck and duck, you see the background got changed and they have gotten opacity of 1. Now, after we have selected the correct cards, we also need to remove the clicked class because they are no longer clicked on. So we need to remove the clicked class from them. So we will remove the clicked class here like this. Same goes with the second element of the array. Okay, so this is it for the condition when both of the selections are equal. Now let's say if we select two different animals, then in that case we will move to the else block, and here what we will do is we will select both the incorrect cards. So the selection process for incorrect cards is also the same. We'll select document.querySelector all dot card dot click. So this will select both the cards which have been clicked on, and since only those two incorrect cards will have the class of clicked, so those two incorrect cards will get selected. Now to the first incorrect card, that is the 0 element of the array, we will add a class of shake. So you must have noticed then whenever we selected incorrect cards, they shaked, the background got changed to red and they shake, like that is wrong. So that shake we are talking about here, also to the second element. Okay, now we need to define some styling for that shake. So card dot shake will change this background color. I have the color code here. Okay, the color code is RGB 241 95 and 95. You can also change this to hex code, which is F15 F5 F. Okay. And also we'll add an animation of shake for 0.5 seconds. Now we need to define this animation, so we'll go to add keyframes, shake, and we'll define this animation. But first let's see whether this is working or not. So in case I select the right ones, the image got disappeared, but the color got changed to green. So yeah, one thing which we need to do is here we also need to change the opacity to 1 whenever the card has the class of checked. Now this the image got hidden because we removed the clicked class here. So you see in this lines we removed the clicked class, so the image got this property got removed from the image. Now let's see. Yeah, whenever the image is checked, whenever we select two correct cards, this image is also there. Okay, now if we select two different, okay, this is also correct. So you see the background got changed to red, but we also need to remove this background after a certain amount of time. So let's say if that we take that time as 400 milliseconds. So we'll run a set timeout function. So in this, okay, first let me write the code. So set timeout function is nothing but a function which will run after a certain amount of time, and that certain amount of time we mention over here. We have mentioned it to be 800 milliseconds. That is nothing but 0.8 seconds. So after that particular amount of time, we will remove the class of shake. Class list dot remove shake. Okay, so this will remove, and we also need to remove the class clicked, because they are no longer clicked on. We can move further to the next selections. We'll also need to do this with the second element of the array. Okay, now let's see. I selected the wrong. They got the red color, and then this got removed. So this is working fine. Now we need to define the shake animation. So for that shake animation, here I've got some code. I'll just copy here and paste. Okay, so this is the animation for the shake. There's nothing but from 0% to 10% these properties will be applied. That is, translate 1 pixel, and it will rotate nothing. Then it will rotate to -1 degree, then 1 degree, then 0, 1, -1. So it will just move like this in along the axis. Let me show this animation. You see, that is the animation. A very little shaky animation. You can increase the amount of value. You can increase the value of these degrees if you want a higher amount of a shake. But this is, I guess, this is enough for our purpose over here. Now let's see if we have anything left in JavaScript. I don't think so. This is it for JavaScript and CSS both. Now let's see whether it's working fine or not. So we selected the right ones. Wrong, right, wrong. Yeah, right. So yeah, this is working absolutely fine. Now you can obviously modify the code as per your convenience. Like, instead of using two different variables here, you can use an array. But since I wanted it to be on the simpler side, I use two different variables. But it's completely up to you how complex you want this program to be. You can minimize the lines of code by, simplifying these things. But it's again, as I said, it's completely up to you. Okay, so this was it for the memory game. I hope you liked it. I hope I was clear enough to explain this to you. And if you like the video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more such videos on projects and apps based on JavaScript and CSS. And thank you for watching. Also, the source code link is available in the description.